each night, hoping for the day that a child will see the light, feeling alone in the darkness, her heart can hardly bear the thought of a child sleeping on the street.
Hello, welcome to Time to Heal. My name is Pam Hemphill and I'll be your host tonight. On this show, I bring you the dark side of addiction to a whole new light by providing you with some recovery solutions. On tonight's discussion, we're going to be sharing with you how to detach with love. You know, as a mother that's having a son out there drinking and using, there's nothing I can do. I know what you're going through. I know what it's like to have a daughter or a son that won't stop drinking, using drugs, or maybe they're getting in trouble with the law. I know what your heart is feeling. So tonight I brought on two people that are going to share with you their story and how their struggles brought them to where they are today and how they're staying sober one day at a time. I'd like to start off first with Don. And Don, would you want to start off by sharing with the audience a little bit about you and your story?
Sure, Pam. I'm an alcoholic, and I started drinking when I was a kid. I couldn't tell you when my first drink was, but I know that I was binge drinking when I was 16, had a license, could get around and go off and do the things that teenagers do. And my dad's an alcoholic, so I grew up in an alcoholic family, and his disease progressed, and he got worse and worse. By the time I was 18, he had pretty much self-destructed and left the family to go somewhere else and make money after losing our business. And I became the man of the family and started working on drilling rigs in the oil fields to support the family. And in the drilling rigs, at the end of the day, they buy a case of beer, and everybody on the crew gets a six-pack. So by the time I was 18, I was drinking a six-pack of beer a day, and every day, and then and more on occasions on my days off. So I went to college, and you know, I'm the oldest son of an alcoholic, and apparently we do kind of predictable things. We're about 80% likely to become alcoholics ourselves. And we tend to do everything as best that we can so that even though we know the family's messed up, we're doing everything we can. So I was a high achiever, went off to college, the first one in my family to do so, and got a good job and had a good career in my field. But I was an alcoholic, and my alcoholism progressed. So as soon as I was able to, I left the family. As soon as my next oldest brother was able to step up into the role of the earner for the family, I took off. I went to college. I would come home on summer break and work hard, give my mom money, and keep what I needed to go to college. And as soon as I could, I got married and went all the way to the other coast. And I separated. I ran away. I separated from my family. And I did that for a long time until the progression of my disease took me to the point where I lost everything I'd earned. I lost my marriage of 25 years. I lost my home. I lost my property. I lost my, self-respect. My kids couldn't be with me anymore because of the way that I was. And I came back to my hometown with my tail tucked, with basically nothing. And lived in an apartment complex that my mom was managing. And, she had supported me whenever I was in my hard times by sending money. But I kept her at a distance because of the shame and feelings that my alcoholic family had. And, it was a hard time for everybody. I tried for a couple of years to get sober with the 12-step program, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I thought I could still get sober on my own. I didn't want to follow all those steps that they had. I didn't want to tell my story to anybody because I thought it was so shameful and I thought I was so unique. And I come to find out that my story is pretty textbook. A lot of people have the exact same. In fact, there's a whole program for people exactly like me and for families like me too in the family, 12-step family programs. So towards the end of my drinking career, I was living in this apartment. I really couldn't support myself. And I remember one instance where I isolated for a week, and I did nothing but drink for a week. And my mom came by, and she knocked on the door and came in, and she said, "Don, I know what you're doing." She said, I saw your dad drink himself to death, and I cannot stand to see you do the same thing. And she gave me a hug, and she said goodbye. And I didn't see her again until I was sober. And Mom was my anchor. You know, no matter how bad I got, I could at least get sympathy from Mom. But when she said that she couldn't stand to see me drink myself to death, like my dad, I was lost. You know, I knew that I was coming to the end of my rope. And I will tell you, I think that moment started my descent into my rock bottom. It really did. She moved away. She packed up and she moved to a different place and left me there. And she said it's going to be all right, but she couldn't see me anymore. And within about 3 months, I finally got to the point where I saw my life going the way my dad's. Just like Mom said, I saw your dad drink himself to death, and I saw my trail. I was either going to drink myself to death and die a lonely, crazy hermit, sick, by myself like my dad did, isolated, or I was going to quit drinking. And I knew that I couldn't quit drinking. I tried with the 12-step program, and I couldn't quit. So I was stuck. Which way am I going to go? And that's when I surrendered my will. And because of my experience with the 12-step programs in the past, I was finally beaten into that, we call it beaten into a degree of reasonableness about my situation. I couldn't fake it anymore. And that's when I had to surrender. And that moment is when my sobriety started, when I surrendered my will and my life over to a higher power. I didn't really have very much of an idea over what my higher power was, but you know, losing that rock of my mom to anchor me and knowing that I was on my own, I think is really what started me to recovery.
The part where you were sharing when your mother said, "I can no longer watch you drink yourself to death like your dad." Were there times, though, that she did try to rescue you, did try to save you?
Because I had separated myself, there wasn't a whole lot she could do besides send money to me when I needed it. But she did set me up with an apartment when I came back with my tail tucked.
And that didn't help you?
No. It gave me a temporary reprieve of responsibility for myself. I could continue to drink.
So all the love, though, your mother had for you couldn't have saved you?
I was beyond human power. I firmly believe that.
So how long have you been sober now?
A little over 3 years.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful. So what are you doing now to maintain your recovery? What do you do?
I have a sponsor that I speak to on a regular basis. He's got a sponsor, and I go to meetings regularly. I have taken a job as support staff at a drug and alcohol recovery center.
Oh, wonderful.
And you know, I'm making my recovery the priority in my life, and I'm fitting everything else around that.
And your mother, what's your relationship now with your mother?
You know, one of the things we do in our program is we make amends to people we've hurt. And we have kind of a set way that we do it. And you tell them what hurt you think you've caused. You let them tell you what hurt that they've caused you that you didn't know, which often is a lot. You let them tell you how they felt about it. And then you ask what you can do to make it better. My mom said, "I just want you to be happy." So I call my mom every week now.
Wonderful.
And tell her I'm happy.
What if you're not happy? Do you tell her you're not happy too? Are you honest in that way?
I'm usually pretty happy when I'm talking to my mama.
Are you? Okay. Well, thank you for sharing this. I'll get back to you in just a minute. You want to share your story with
Yeah.
your family and what happened with you and your drug use?
Yeah, I started smoking pot when I was about 14, 15 years old, and I started selling a lot of cocaine by my senior year of high school, and it progressed from there. A lot of the same things, a lot of smoking weed and drinking beer from time to time on the weekends. And, I was more heavy into the drugs, not so much the drinking. That was more so my demise towards the end of that. And, when I started using opiates was really, what really took me. That was my big collapse, was, starting using opiates, because that took a hold of me in a whole nother manner, that I had never experienced before. And, through a lot of selling drugs, I had gotten into a lot of legality trouble, and I was actually in prison for a little while, and, I'd caught about 3 different cases when I was 18 years old, and the first one wound up being a deferral. And under the circumstances, I wasn't in trouble again. It would all be erased. You'd think that would be enough to keep me clean and keep me out of the streets, but it wasn't. I thought that, well, maybe I might be able to fly below the radar and stay out of trouble. Well, that only lasted for about, I think it was almost 7 months. And from there, it was about a month after that, and I caught my next case. And so I remember the first one, the prosecutor had offered me a deal to plead guilty to this charge, to a felony, and there'd be no jail time. So I asked my attorney, I said, and this was a question that came from my parents, was, if I were your son, what would you have me do? And she said, I'm going to be honest, I would say, with the evidence that we have on our side, I'd say let's take it to trial. So that we did. On about, like I said, another month later, I wound up, as we were preparing for that trial, there was a search warrant. The police had came and found me, and they had a search warrant for my house. And I was still living with my parents at the time. So mind you, while this is going on now, there's still another case that's in the mix going on. So they came in the house, and they didn't find any drugs, but they found a large sum of money. And with that being said, and while that was going on, I was actually already in jail. And the search warrant actually said that, bail would be posted in court, but since I didn't find any actual drugs within the house or my vehicle, they posted a bail that night, and I actually bonded out. And then I fought both of those cases, and we went to trial, and I actually had beaten both of those cases, which was a blessing, it seemed, at the time. But in the near future, about 2 years later, in that time span, I had gotten into more trouble. I thought I was bulletproof. I didn't think that, it would ever catch. I didn't think I would ever be that guy to have to actually serve time for what I had done. And so when I fought my 4th and 5th case in trial, I had a case law with an attorney represented, and that I thought paralleled a case in Washington, which was a State versus Neth in 2008. And it said that illegal innocuous objects such as swishers, money, air fresheners, and empty unused baggies wasn't enough to get a search warrant, and we thought that would work. Well, it didn't, and the judge wound up, dismissing, or not dismissing that, but disregarding that from the case, and kept moving forward. So on the day of the jury trial, when we were actually getting ready to bring in the jury, the prosecutor had offered me a deal, whether or not I wanted to take this deal for a year and a day in prison, or we'd continue and go to trial, and I could roll the dice. Well, I called my parents that day, and, it was kind of a no-brainer. For the amount of time I was looking at, the year and a day was, it was a small price to pay. So I went outside that day, and I remember calling my dad, and I told him, Dad, I'm in a lot of trouble, and, I don't know if you know the extent of it, but they just offered me a deal for a year and a day, and I'd do 8 months on that time, and I'd be out and be over and done with. And it really took him by surprise. I didn't want to, they had kind of bailed me out my first 2 times, 3 times actually, and I didn't want to involve them on my 4th and 5th time. So, you know, I really kept them at a distance on it. They didn't know what was going on. It was something I was extremely ashamed of. You know, this should have never happened. You know, none of it should have ever happened. But, you know, they drove over from Tri-Cities where they were living at, and they spent the weekend with me in Tacoma, and I kind of gathered my thoughts and tried to gather some of my things and spend some time with them before I went away. And, you know, through my imprisonment, my mom and dad and girlfriend, brother, and a few other family members came and supported me and came and visited, and they'd send me money from time to time. And from my experience, that was one of the best things for me, because it really showed me a lot of care and support that I had through my family, which a lot of other people didn't. And some even who did, they would spend that money in prison on tobacco or drugs. And, you know, and I used to shake my head at them, you know, how could you do that? You know, they're still here in your corner fighting for you, and you can't even pay them the respect to at least spend the money on what they gave it to you for.
Is this something you'd say to yourself? Or
This
to
is something I
others?
would say to myself, because
Okay.
you know, it was their deal. I didn't want to get in the way of their thing, and that's kind of a part of doing time, is you just do your time. You know, it's kind of a respect thing too. You know, it's
But while you were locked up, you're saying you were able to get drugs while you were there in
Right.
prison.
right.
And the money they were sending you, you were using that to buy the drugs? Buy drugs, to smoke pot?
Yeah, I had smoked pot a couple times in prison, so you know, it was definitely relevant, and you know, it's something I still hold some shame for. But you know, when I got out of prison, I'd flied straight for a while until, you know, I was working a job, and it was kind of an unhealthy environment, and
I wanna stop you just for a minute.
okay,
For this, feel a lot of shame for it, don't feel a lot of shame. Your addiction is more powerful than you. Those are the things that we do. The drug becomes more important than mom, dad, anybody, right? So you using while you were in prison was part of your addiction, not you.
right,
Doesn't that make sense? If you hadn't surrendered yet to your disease and was really wanting to stop, and it's right there in front of you, and you mentioned earlier when we were sharing that there is no 12-step meetings there, what were you to do? I'm not giving you an out,
yeah.
but
There wasn't much, you know. I just tried to, you know, deal with life on life's terms at the time, and you know, that was just a part of it. That's all I knew how to do, you know, was to use drugs and smoke weed. That's, you know, and I was good at it, you know. You know, who doesn't want to do something that they're not good at, you know? And it's, you know, like it says, it's cunning and baffling, and you know, I don't think I have a problem, you know, but you know, I was trying to mask some of the stress, you know, and that was my out. You know, those few times I had smoked pot, you know, not to minimize it, but you know, it was just, you know, it was just kind of it was just something I did, you know. I don't know how to explain it. I really
Yeah.
don't. I can try to find words for it, but I can't, you know.
so mom and dad sending you money, in all intentions just to help you, because that extra money while you're in prison helps you buy a few things that you wouldn't be able to get, correct?
Correct.
So as parents, it's really hard, you know, because we want to help you. And what is the myth that we are taught as parents that, you know, about, you know, they talk about being codependent. We don't want to be codependent. We don't want to enable. But so how do you define that? Talking to our audience, what would you be saying to these parents? You know, what has been the biggest barrier for you? What did they do that kept you still using? Don?
I think she held out hope for me. I think she thought that her love could make me stop and change my behavior, get me an apartment, you know, give me money when I needed it, trying to give me encouragement. I think her love she thought that her love could make me change my behavior, and it couldn't.
Can you explain to our audience why that doesn't work for an alcoholic?
Because I was absolutely powerless over alcohol. I could not stop. There is no way I could stop drinking. I tried to stop, and I would look at a glass of booze in it, and I would say, if I drink this, it's going to be bad. Nothing good is going to happen. I should not drink it. I don't want to drink it. And I would drink it because I had to. I didn't have a choice. And nothing my mom could have done would have would have changed that. What she did do was say, I can't see you drink yourself to death anymore. I love you, but I can't be a part of this.
That was a gift she gave to herself for doing that, backing off
That was.
from you. Yeah. So what would you say to your mom and dad today to prevent you from them, enabling you again? It sounded like they were helping you get out of trouble when you were in court. Were they paying for all your legal?
Yeah, they did. And it's honestly, it's a tough question, because if I had those legality problems still hanging over my head, the old mentality would have came back. And that's part of the disease, is I would have thought that maybe I could get out of this and erase some of these fines by selling dope again. But with that having been done for me, it was able to actually let me move on and focus on my job, and and start to move forward. In some cases that might not be the best way out. It's kind of a case by case thing. But in my situation, I was blessed enough and I was grateful enough that my parents were able to do that. And not everyone's parents are able to do that. And I'm very grateful for that. And I love them to death. And and I think that's a mutual understanding. And I think I underestimated that love until I was in treatment this time. And this is my first trip to treatment, but they've been there by my side. They've been to the family days, at the end of the month, and come support me. And actually watching my dad, when he had to introduce himself to the group and explain why he was there, and watching him struggle through that, it was really jerked my heart. That was a really tough thing to watch happen. And I just want to do right by now. I want to take the tools I've learned there and move forward and not let this happen again. But I got to stay active, in this 12-step program, and keep going to meetings, and and keep speaking with others, and keep giving away what was given to me. And I think that's kind of the key to it. And that's why I appreciate so much you having me on the show. It gives me an opportunity to do that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming and sharing your story. Don, do you have any questions you'd like to ask him?
So, Brent, I've known you for a little while now. What do you think you're going to do when you get out of treatment?
Well, I've been speaking with a gentleman, Chicano Don, and he was on the show with me last week. And there's a few things he wants me to do with him. Go speak at schools to, I think it's junior high and high school, which I'm really excited about doing. But, that's a little of the above and beyond. But, as far as the day-to-day things is going to meetings and taking a daily moral inventory, and keep working the steps and stay humble and keep looking. I'm very grateful to be working the steps now, because it gives me a chance to look at these different areas in life that not everyone is fortunate enough to look at. Believe it or not, it truly is a blessing, and I'm a grateful recovering addict today.
And Don, would you like to share anything else about what you would suggest to parents out there that are struggling with their daughter or son that's using right now? We have right now an epidemic going on with the heroin overdoses, and it's very tragic. And our prayers are going out to all of you that have lost a loved one. Is there anything you would like to share with them about this problem that we're having that may help a parent?
Denial is a big part of being a parent. My children are not addicts or alcoholics, but just I know that you always want to think the best of your kids, and that denial can cause the harm to go on for longer than it has to. But I think from my own experience, I know that there's nothing my mom could have done to change my behavior. She had to let me go, and I had to do it on my own. Sorry, that's wrong. I had to come to where I surrendered and accepted help. And parents, as much as they want to make their, and I'm a parent too, as much as they want to help their kids, sometimes they can't, and they have to accept that. And they have to let their kids know that they love them, but they can't be a part of what they're doing.
Thank you. It's so true. My son has been drinking now for about 4 or 5 years, very heavy, maybe 1 or 2 quarts of whiskey a day. He's on the streets.
Yeah.
And they accused him of trying to sell his food stamps so he could buy whiskey. He's gotten down to the very bottom. He's in the chronic stages of his alcoholism. I spent a few years doing everything they told me not to do. I enabled that kid. I gave him money. I gave him a place to live. I loved him. And here I am, 34 years in recovery. I'm an alcohol and drug counselor. I know better, but it's my child.
But you're a mom.
I want to save him.
Yep.
And I couldn't. So I started going to the 12-step programs to save my son. And then one day, I realized I needed to go there to save me. I was sick. I was helping him stay sick. And so, you know, it's a tough one. It's really hard. Without help, like you said in the last show, we can't do this by ourselves. We need outside help. You know, and we need support. And the main thing is not to keep the secrets, not to keep the stuff held inside, and share it with somebody and get someone else to help us and work through these issues, you know, so we're not feeling like we're the only ones doing this, you know.
Right.
There's help out there.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both. You know, I really enjoyed this today, and you're really an asset to the community. And, you know, coming here and sharing your stories, we don't know who you've helped. I hope, you know, somebody heard what you had to say today, and maybe we'll pick up that phone and call someone. Is there anything quickly you'd like to just share real fast to the audience before I end? Any one of you?
Yeah, you know, the family 12-step programs are an incredible resource that help a lot of people, not just parents, but spouses and siblings of alcoholics and addicts.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, and same thing is, you know, the parents need to go through their recovery as much as we do too, as addicts and alcoholics. You know, it's something that they need to repair and recover from because, you know, they were put through a lot of trauma and stress. And, you know, I encourage my parents to go to those meetings today. And I love them both dearly.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us today. And if you're struggling with any addiction, please call. We have a national wide helpline, which is 877-234-2467. That's a national-wide helpline at 877-234-2467. And don't give up, because your miracle is on its way.
He knew he could trust her with his child from above. There's no rest for the weary, whereas one crisis follows another. The pain rolls deep in the heart of a mother. This nightmare may have made her question her fate, but I have no doubt that in heaven for her, God has a special place. God has a special